do that. Okay, we're recording. So hi everyone. I'm so excited and so grateful that you're here with me tonight. What I'd like to do is a little bit of introductions before we get started for the ladies who are with us tonight. So I'm going to start with Joanne, if you could say your name, which I just said, and a little bit about yourself. And then we'll come back and we'll get started. So I'm going to start with Joanne. She's the first one on my screen here. So.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joanne, and I live in Rochester, New York, married for 48 years, 2 kids, 4 grandsons, and this is awesome because I am having cataract surgery tomorrow on my both eyes, but only one. They'd only do one at a time. My right eye. So this is going to keep me busy from thinking.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah, and once it's all done, I won't have to wear glasses anymore except for reading. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited, and I know it will go well tomorrow. And I'm glad you could be.
No, it'll be fine. Yeah, they're gonna give me happy medicine. I made sure. Because the thought of them going in my eye and me being awake just kind of
a little weird.
Oozes me out. Yeah.
Okay, Beth.
I'm Beth, and I live in Western North Carolina in the mountains. I love the mountains. I moved down here after I got a divorce, and my daughter already lived here, and she had one daughter and another one on the way, and now she's got a 3.5-year-old little boy too. So the girls like to craft with me and make cards with me. I'm a beginner watercolorer, and I'm taking any chance I can get to learn to better my skills.
I love that. I love that. We're all beginners. And it just takes practice. I just love that. Oh, Peggy.
Hello, everyone. I live in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I've taken a couple of classes from Lisa at the Photo Scraps in Sykesville.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait till we can gather there again. Hopefully
I hope so.
New year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've taken a couple of classes that way in the shop, but I thought it would be fun to try some watercolor.
Yeah, I know there hasn't been that many watercolor classes that I've taught there. It's usually Copic or other things, and we were just getting ready to get started on all that, and then 2020.
Yeah, we know.
Right.
So,
and I'm a cataract survivor, so
great.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Robin. I don't know if her sound's up. Oh, there she is. In the chat, she says, "Hello, I'm Robin. I live in Michigan. I'm not good with computers, so I don't know how to do the video." Okay.
Just click the camera.
Yep. If you want to come on video, Robin, there's a little, in the lower left-hand corner, if you're on your desktop, there's a little button that says stop video, start video. It's like a little video camera. So you could click that button if you'd like and turn that on, and we can see you. There's also a microphone next to it that says mute or turn on. So you might be muted, and that might be why we can't hear you. So.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Hello, Robin.
Hi.
A little bit about yourself.
I'm from Michigan, and I have been crafting my entire life. Still can't figure out how to make the video start, so I'm just going to leave it before I do something.
It's totally fine. Don't worry.
I'm really looking forward to watercoloring. I've done it in the past, but I want to get more comfortable with it, and I love all your artwork, and I was really excited that you had this class, so This is just way cool.
Thank you, Robin. Oh, that makes me
Do you
feel
see
so.
something in the back, Lisa?
Oh yes.
Wow.
Oh my.
I've got a couple more that I've got to get put up on the walls. I moved and I haven't had I'm still organizing, so I don't have things up on my walls yet, but it's there to put up.
Well, organizing our craft and studio spaces is a long process
Yeah.
because we're all collectors, right?
Yeah.
We all have some things that we needed to have, absolutely had to have.
Oh, I'm beyond collecting. I'm a hoarder.
Oh, but that's okay. It brings you joy. If you're crafting your joy and it brings you joy, then that's all that matters, especially now, right?
Right.
Okay. So cool. Okay, so I have two cameras here. So I'm going to toggle back and forth from me and to a down facing camera so that we can do some techniques and kind of talk a little bit about the kit. The kit, the biggest part about the kit was that I really wanted to be able to deliver those luscious watercolors to you in a dot card, just in case you had never had an opportunity to try Daniel Smith watercolors or, those colors. So kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and go down. We're going to go over the kit, kit and the supplies. And then I'm going to dive into some of the things about watercolor, since everyone has kind of shared, and a lot of people share this with me often, that watercolor feels very intimidating to them. It's hard because they feel like they have absolutely no control over what happens with it. And the beautiful thing is you're totally in control. Watercolor just wants to flow wherever you want to let it go. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to talk about paper. And if you've watched a lot of my tutorials, I talk about paper a lot, probably too much. But I'm going to talk about paper because, and I covered this in the class, if you, in the classroom, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it. And I have two samples of what we're doing tonight in two different kinds of paper, and you can tell a huge difference between the two. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to my down camera, and I'll be toggling back and forth. Now, when I come down to the down camera, it takes a little minute to, how's everybody's screen? Everything look good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I see a little bit of that I didn't want to see, but that's okay. I'm going to bring this out. So everyone who got their kit, this kit was so fun to put together. Let me just change my screen view so that I could see a little bit better. Okay. Is it showing up like bright enough for you, like the lighting? It's sometimes difficult for me to see. Yeah. Okay.
It looks fine to me.
Okay.
Looks good.
Yeah, looks
good.
good.
Good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so everything in the kit. So again, the Playful Poinsettia Kit, this was everything in the kit, and your coupon code is there if you haven't already used it. But everything in the class, I go over the kit, but also when you're in the classroom, just note that you have all of these things that are in this kit in a downloadable fashion in the classroom. It's there for you as well. So you can download it along with the technique sheets. So in the class, I make this card. So you get the techniques in the class to make all 3 cards, but I make this one in the classroom. So super fun. And I'm going to pull this out. And I've got all those goodies in the kit. And then this was a super fun little goodie. Gotten into these little vinyl stickers lately, and I wanted to make sure that everybody got one of those in the kit as well. Okay.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and talk about the paper options. Now in the kit and in the classroom, I talk about this a lot. I gave everyone a poinsettia that was in 100% cotton watercolor paper. So I have two favorites that I like for 100% watercolor paper. And I've got some samples here for you to show you. Often when you feel like you're not getting good results with your watercolor, it doesn't have anything to do with you or the watercolor. It has everything to do with the paper. Everything to do with the paper. And I'll show you why. So here is one of the papers. This is a paper that I use a lot for paper crafting projects, and it's 100% cotton. It's made by Arteza. It's really reasonably priced, but the key to it is that it's 100% cotton. And that is the paper. This is the paper that I used for your kit. And a paper that I often use, and you can find this, this is the Mac Daddy of 100% cotton papers. I just wanted to show it to you. You don't need it for your paper crafting projects. The Arteza works really well. You probably have also heard me talk about B Paper Company paper. Well, holy smokes, B Paper Company paper is impossible to acquire since March, anywhere in the world, anywhere. So I don't know what has happened, but a lot of people have shared that it's been difficult to, it's like it disappeared. So this paper right here is a great paper. I use this, I'm just going to show you when I do like bigger paintings.
That's
I
pretty.
love Iris.
When I do bigger paintings. This is a painting. This is in my shop as a print too. So this is one of the papers that I use. And the results that you get with the watercolor is really nice on that 100% cotton paper. So now here is another paper. This is a paper we're all kind of familiar with, the Canson watercolor paper. And I don't love this paper at all for the kinds of watercolor techniques that I often teach, and that what I'm going to teach and we're going to talk about tonight. This paper is fantastic for some of your paper crafting projects when you're using like water-based markers like Zig markers or Tombow markers. I have a video that I released on YouTube today. I used this paper in the project, but I used Tombow markers, and it works great on that. But on our Playful Poinsettias, not so much. So here's the one on the left. This is 100% cotton. Here's the one on the right. This is that Canson, not 100% cotton paper.
Wow.
There's a difference.
Wow.
There's a huge, huge difference. You can, and I'm going to bring them up a little closer to the camera. Now, I painted them both exactly the same with the same amount of layers. Oh, my camera just, sorry about that. It wanted to come out and greet you. There we go. I guess I breathed on it a little too much. So I'm going to bring this up closer to the camera so that you can see that texture in the color, that dimension of the color, like all of those layers. Now this is 3 layers of color. And because the 100% cotton watercolor paper is has so many amazing like fibers in the cotton, and it takes layer after layer, what it does is it helps the paint glow on the paper. Okay. So takes the camera a second to refocus. Now I'm going to bring our pretty little this guy up a little closer. Now she's pretty, but she's just not as vibrant. And you can see now I like some of the different texture and some of the that you get, but with the same, to get that glow, I'm probably going to have to put like 2 more layers of color on this to get that glow. So you have to work it a little bit more. But that's the difference between the two. And that's why I felt like it was so important to do the 100% cotton paper. Not that she isn't pretty. I don't want her to get upset, but she's just, it's if you're finding that you have worked with watercolor in the past and you're not getting the results, or you've gotten frustrated, this could be why. It could be the paper. Very easily could be the paper. How many of you have watercolored and used Canson before? Canson watercolor paper or paper like that?
I have.
Yeah, yeah. And you felt like, what the heck's happening here, right?
Right. I
Yeah.
thought, what am I doing wrong?
Right. What am I doing wrong? So often, and
Yeah.
that's the thing about watercolor. Now this is the same paint too. How could it be so different? It's the paper. So when it's not 100% cotton, this is a cellulose paper. So basically the cotton fibers are smashed together to make the paper. It's a really nice paper for paper crafting and with water-based markers, but not so much with paint. I just don't enjoy it as much as I do with 100% cotton. So that's me getting on that soapbox about the paper. But again, you could be using a paint that isn't like a Daniel Smith paint. It doesn't have to be a Daniel Smith paint. You could be using a paint and the watercolor, hold on, I'm sorry. And the watercolor effects could be varying very differently just because of the paper that's being used. So that's my huge tip of the day and my little soapbox thing about paper. Because often if you've gone and you've picked up a paper like that and you started, even if you used a Crayola set and you started to paint, you would get some really funky results and then you might not try again. And for me, I'm like, oh no, we need more watercolor people. We need more, come, we need more friends. So, okay. So any questions about paper or any paper that you might have used in the past for watercolor? Watercolor, there's a lot of different kinds of watercolor sketchbooks that are out there. And I'll name a few brands, like Strathmore is a brand that you can commonly find in your craft stores, like local craft stores. But again, the Strathmore paper is very much like the Canson, but probably a little bit of a step up. So I would encourage you to you probably have some watercolor paper in your stash. Get it out and give it a go and see what you can make it do. But now that you have the kit, you know what that 100% cotton feels like and what it looks like. So you'll be able to spot it pretty quickly. So any questions about the paper before we kind of talk about some techniques?
The Bristol paper that
Yes.
they say is good with the zig
Yes.
markers.
It is.
And it definitely works better on the Bristol than other paper. Is that something you can watercolor on, or is that no?
Well, it is, watch, I'm going to come back so that you guys can see my face. Oops. Okay. So the Bristol paper is fantastic. Like you said, for the water-based markers like Zig and the Artezas or Tombos. Not so good with the watercolor paper with watery techniques. The paper will start to pill.
Okay.
Because there's so much water that we're trying to get it to take, and it has nowhere to go. There's not enough fibers in the paper, and it's so smooth. Now, if you were doing like light washes of watercolor, you could totally do it. And I've done that. Like if you emboss a stamped image for your card and you just want to go in there and add a little light wash of watercolor, you can totally do that with the technique that we're going to talk about. It's called wet on dry. So not super, super wet, but the paper's dry. My brush is a little bit wet. I've got it loaded up with pigment, but you got to kind of work fast. I've even done a little bit of watercolor on some of our traditional paper crafting white papers, like from Gina K and like different brands that you can use. I've done just a little bit, but remember those papers don't have the the fiber, cotton fiber consistency in them to be able to take that intense water. So they will pill up. And you might notice too, if you're using your water-based markers on those papers, if you've gone over it a couple times, too many, you bore a hole through the paper and you're like, what just happened here? Right? What just happened here? But it happens. It's kind of funny. But my favorite with Bristol, and I have a couple videos where I talk about Bristol because I love that paper to use with the zig. The Canson works really well on the zig too. It's just a little harder to emboss on it because it's not as smooth. So didn't want everything to turn into me ranting about paper. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go down to the down camera and I'm going to talk a little bit about that wet on dry technique. So these two techniques, and I'm gonna demonstrate them for you. These two techniques are the two main techniques for watercolor that you use on the Playful Poinsettia. Wet on dry and glazing. And glazing basically means layering. So once I've painted one layer and it's completely dried in between, I would add another layer over top. And then because watercolor is transparent, all the color underneath it kind of shows through that layer and it glows. It starts to glow. So the more layers that we add, the glazing, that's the technical watercolor term for it, but you can just call it layering. The more we get that depth of color, the more we get that variation in the different watercolor. You can see all the layers. If you look now, you can see all the layers painted in this. So let's go ahead. I'm going to bring this in here and we're going to demonstrate this on a piece. Let me get the camera to focus, of 100% cotton watercolor paper, right? Of course, right? Okay. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about brushes real quick. And I kind of, in the classroom, when you get a chance to take the class, if you haven't already, I talk about brushes quite a bit. These are my favorite brushes for watercolor. They're the silver black velvet brushes. I really, really like these. They hold a lot of water. They get to a really sharp point. You can use any kind of brush that you have in your stash. Believe me, you can. The only difference is how much water stays in the brush and how many times do you have to refill the brush and refill the brush with pigment and water. So I really like these because they're pretty reasonably priced and they've lasted, like I've had these several years. They last a really, really long time. There's a couple other different brands, Princeton, Winsor Newton. There's lots of different brushes. So you could just experiment. Here's, you know what, this is a new one. This Princeton brush Elite. I think I picked this one up at Michael's just to try it because it's a new brush from Princeton and it's a really, really like consumer friendly priced. And I picked it up there and I really, really like it. It comes to a nice sharp point. And I've been testing it out for a while. So I really like it. It's a nice one. So I'm going to start with the Silver Black Velvet 6. And I've got a little container of water here over on the side. I'm going to bring in, here's my little palette of all of the colors that we have in the kit. So these are like, I'm going to digress for a moment and talk about these colors because I know they're in your kit. And how many of you have already started to paint your poinsettias or you haven't started yet?
I haven't started yet.
Robin, have you?
No.
No. Well, good. Now you can, right? Well, I mean, okay, now I'm going to ask the next question. How many of you have made holiday cards?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Me either. Last year I didn't make any. So there we go. Like I made a few that I was going to share, but I didn't make any to send to anybody. That tends to be what happens. So we are in plenty of time to do all the things that we want to do, right? So the colors are in the kit were quinacridone red, quinacridone coral, new gamboge, opera pink. Oh, I love that color. And this color, Cascade green. Now, all of these colors just work so, oh, and pearl white. This is a shimmer color that's just amazing to use. And it's in the class, I use it as a splatter. Oh, and it's so pretty. A nice little splatter technique there. So love these colors. And I have them, you guys have them on your dot card. I have them squeezed out here, right in here that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the wet on dry technique that we're going to predominantly use to paint the poinsettia tonight. So the paper is dry, bone dry, but my brush is wet. I'm going to dip it into my pigment here, my paint. And I'm going to actually show you this brush. I'm going to bring this brush up. Look at all that color. That's the beautiful thing about these brushes. And as you start to watercolor more and you want to experiment with different brushes, this kind of brush, it holds so much water and so much pigment. I could paint for a really long time without having to dip my brush back in. So that's what makes me happy. So the paper is dry, my brush is wet, and I'm painting my color on the paper. So it is pretty intense in color, and it's only, the camera is going to refocus, sorry about that. Come on, there we go. It's only going where I put it, right? It's not moving. So if you want total control over your watercolor, wet on dry is the way to go. The paper is dry, my brush is wet, the pigment is wet. It only goes where I paint it. Okay. Now that's I'm going to clean out my brush a little bit and get it a little bit wet here. And I'm just going to make it move a little bit here. But you notice that the paper's dry, my brush is wet, and the watercolor's only moving where I paint it and where I put it. So this is a technique that's about control and controlling the watercolor. Okay. Now I'm going to show you wet on wet, the one that freaks everybody out. I'm going to show you to it right next to it. So the paper is wet, and it's actually my favorite technique. A lot of you'll hear me talk about washy watercolor.
Yep.
Talk about it all the time, right? Washy.
Yep.
So
You're washy.
Washy. Especially in the videos, I get a little excited about it. Okay, so the paper is going to be wet. So my brush is wet. There's no pigment in it. The paper's dry, but I'm gonna paint with water for a minute here. You can't really see it, but now I'm going to load up my brush with some paint, and I'm going to drop that color in. And I'm going to let it move. And you can see I can move it around. But what I want to show you is, notice how it only goes where the water is. It won't go outside of that area. And you can get some really, really nice looks. I'm going to drop some yellow in there. And this technique is so fun.
Oh, wow.
But can feel frightening to some because it's so flowy. But it's not moving outside of its little area here. So again, watercolor only wants to go where the water is. We either move it to that place, oops, we literally paint it on, or we drop it in. with the wet on wet. So wet on wet techniques are stuff that I share a lot. I'm gonna drop that in. Just let that color drop. Now I can coax, see how it's starting to pill up right here? It wants to get out of that. See how it can't? It won't go.
Yeah.
It can't go because there's no water to draw it under it. But if I just put a little gully right there, see how I can make it go?
Mm.
So again, watercolor only wants to go where the water is. So one of the feelings that people have is that it's a medium they can't control, therefore they don't know how to work with it. But you are in total control of it because it only wants to go where you tell it to go, where you put the water, where you paint it, where you drop it into. It only wants to go there. And I just love this technique because you just can just drop and drop and drop. So that's super fun. Any questions about the wet on dry and the wet on wet?
No.
Okay, cool. In the class, I do get into the wet on wet technique, but we don't use it as much. We do a lot of the wet on dry. And I'm gonna, when we go to paint, oh, look at that. It just splotched my, there's paint starting to get everywhere around here.
So are you using the wet on dry so you have more control with the poinsettia, or?
Yes, exactly. Using the wet on dry with this, when we go to paint the poinsettia in a few minutes, because we're going to do some layers and glazing, and because we have the lines. This isn't like a no line watercoloring.
Okay.
So we've got the lines and we kind of want to stay in the lines a little bit. So we want to control where that watercolor is going. So we're going to intentionally paint it into the two areas, into the areas. And I'm going to show you both ways, wet on wet and wet on dry.
Lisa?
Okay, because
Yes. Oh, Beth, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I had a question about the lines,
Yes.
the actual flower. Is that ink or pencil? What have you?
So that's a very good question. And when we go to paint it, I'm going to talk about why we can't touch the lines. So this is output ink. It's ink and then it's die cut. So then I had have them die cut. Now, when you paint them, I'm going to get this a little closer and give it a chance to focus. I got a little bit of water on those lines and used that ink and let it blend with my watercolor a little bit.
Okay.
So when you go to take the class, you'll see me talk you through that, because some people, you might get a little freaked out the first time it happens, right?
Yeah.
But you really use it like right in there. If I can get in close there, you can see, you can really use it to your advantage. So to help bring a little bit more depth. And I'm going to talk about that.
Thank you.
My camera to refocus. Hello, camera. Okay. And Beth, you had a question too.
I guess the artists that I watch the YouTube videos for, a lot of them will do the wet on wet, but they'll do like one petal and then they'll do one on the other side of the flower.
That's what we're going to do. That's exactly what happens in the class. And that's why this takes a little longer, because we're going to go here, 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 here. And you just kind of keep going because you're allowing each petal to have some drying time in between while you're working on it. And, you know, you can use your heat tool to kind of dry it up in between. So I'm going to show you glazing and how that's done, because that's a big part of this, painting this poinsettia, because it's not, you could paint it in one layer and be totally happy with it, but to get that glow with the watercolor, it takes about 3 or 4 layers, 3 or 4 layers to get that kind of glow going. So I'm going to do some glazing here. and I'm going to pick up some of this quinacridone red, and I'm just going to paint it out. So I'm doing wet on dry. My brush is wet, and I'm picking up the pigment, and I kind of laid down a little bit. So that's another thing. If you when you paint it in and you feel like you've got too much paint and you want to take it off, just clean your brush, and you can drag your brush through your paint. Just keep cleaning your brush in between. You can take it out. So you can also like force that look of those lights to darks just by working the paint that you have. And as you pick up that paint, you can use it elsewhere. So I can force that light to dark there. Now I'm going to turn on my heat tool, so it's going to get a little bit noisy. But the other thing I wanted to share about watercolor, and sometimes, oh, Marita popped in. Hello.
Hello.
Well, hi, Marita.
Hello.
I'm glad you could join us. And
I'm sorry, I forgot it said 7 o'clock Eastern time, which means 6 o'clock my time.
no worries. So what I shared in the beginning before we got going is that I am recording today's session, and I will be posting it on my website on a private blog just for everybody who purchased the kit, and I'll send out the link. So you could always go back and see the beginning.
Okay.
The first, I don't know, like 40 minutes or so. So you won't miss anything. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay. Oh, Beth's cat. Oh my God, I'm dying.
Yeah,
It's just, cats are very
he's
intuitive.
just sitting right there in front
He's
of him.
just staring right in it. It's
They're-
funny.
because they're very curious. They're intuitive creatures.
I've actually got 2 yellow ones, and they're both walking back and forth. I don't know if you realize.
From all the voices, they probably want to know what's happening. So we have the piece that I glazed, that I just put that first layer. Now I'm going to turn on my heat tool because I want to dry this completely. And what happens is our watercolor, when we first paint it, looks super, super vibrant. But then when it dries, it doesn't look so good, right? What happens is the watercolor will fade back, often 2 shades. And that's where glazing comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this. It was already starting to dry because I was yammering on. So let's just go ahead and give this a good, I'm going to make sure that's bone dry. That was pretty loud. Okay, so it's bone dry, and you can see that pretty color is not so bright. But that's okay. We're going to put some more color on it. We're going to glaze. So when we're doing that glazing technique, in between each layer, we've painted that first layer. We want to go in and add our second layer. I've got my brush. It's completely clean. I dip it into my paint, and then I just start painting another layer over top. And I'm not going to cover the whole thing, just so you can start to see the differences between it. The 2 shades that we've got here. So I'm going to dry it again. Ooh, I love it. And you can see, hopefully you can see, the color underneath it is because of the transparency, we're starting to see the color start to glow. I'm going to add another layer of that color.
Are all the Daniel Smith colors transparent, or just
Yeah.
some of them?
Yes, they're all transparent. And that's another great question. I'm going to talk about transparency and how to make your watercolors a little more opaque. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this. It looks so pretty. You can see all 3 layers. I'm going to go ahead and dry it. You can take a sneaky peeky. Woo! Loving that. Okay, so you can see all 3 layers that I've glazed in. You see the light, the medium, and the dark. Love that. That third layer is that's our glow layer. Now I'm going to do something a little interesting. I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow and I'm going to pop it right on top. I often will take yellow, I'm going to dry it, and pop it on top of my finishing color because it changes the whole look. Hopefully I can get that to, it changes the whole look. And it gives a little bit more, it gives that extra pop of color. I'm going to show you in the sample here. You see how I've added yellow in the end. It gives it a little bit more texture. It just kind of goes where it wants to go. And again, on that, just on that drying, that wet on dry technique. But we can see with the glazing, you can see all 4 layers. I hope that's coming through pretty well for you.
Yeah.
Lisa? Yes.
When you do your glazing,
Yes.
do you cover the whole thing or just in certain areas like you only did the top?
Yeah, I only did the top to show you. When we go to do the poinsettia,
Right,
I only, like when you're going from layer to layer to layer, you don't
right,
want to just paint over top of each layer because all you're going to get is just a more intense depth of color.
right.
We paint a little bit around and we just add a little bit here and add a little bit there
Oh,
as we're
okay.
layering. And then that's what gives you all of that
All the,
extra dimension
okay.
and extra.
So you kind of pick and choose where you want to add your, oh.
Kind of pick and choose, but also do this technique. Also leaving the whites, and it's all just done with the brush. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you. Let me go ahead and go to the down camera, and I'm going to demonstrate that because that is such a good question. Let me grab a different piece of 100% cotton paper, and I'm going to glaze again. But I'm going to show you how we would do it, even though we're going to paint this, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to paint in a petal. Okay, but see how I'm just taking my brush and I'm going like little swoopy motion. And I'm just using my brush to kind of just put in some color in that petal. I'm going to bleed out a little bit. I got a little bit too much in there. I'm a firm believer that you don't have to have any illustration skills whatsoever to do watercoloring. You can, if you master the different things that you can do with your brush and the strokes that you can make with your brush, you can paint anything. So if I was to take that same little stroke that I just did, and I'm just going to bleed out that color just a little bit. I'm elongating it a little bit. And see how I'm just pulling it out. And basically I've got myself a petal. And I left areas of white. So I'm going to dry it in between. Then we're going to add another layer. But this time, so see how it layers? It's often disappointing, that first layer of glaze, right? That color just is so intense when you paint it, and then when it dries, it's a little disappointing. But that's where glazing comes in. So now I'm going to go ahead and pick up some more of that color. And now I'm just going to pick and choose where I'm going to put some of this layer. And I think that's good enough. So I'm leaving some of the whites that I've already made. And I'm just adding in some of those colors. And you can see that I'm already starting to get that light and dark. I intentionally put that color wherever I wanted to put it. I'm going to dry this. Oh, I love it. So that's 2 layers, and look at the depth and the difference You can see it, that glow that you're getting, and also the texture that it creates, because I've got that lighter layer underneath. I'm starting to layer something darker over top. Now I could go in again. It's usually 3 layers. I've been known to go up to 6 and then ruin it, you know, or just keep going. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit of yellow. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of yellow in a couple places. And you see how I'm just kind of letting the tip of the brush kind of do its thing. You're really just kind of playing, being really wispy with the brush. Oh, I'm loving that. Let me dry that. And that yellow just intensifies that color. So that's
You're amazing.
blazing, but you could totally do this. You saw me. All I did was just use my brush and I just painted.
But you make it look so easy. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
You could totally do this just practicing with your brush strokes. I'm going to throw another brush stroke thing in. And you probably have seen this if you've watched some of my other videos. Actually, I have a new tutorial that is going to come out, I think Monday, for November. Every month, if you guys are all signed up in the classroom, I know all of you are. In the classroom, if you don't already know this, I have the whole Art Exploration 2020 free classes that are in there. Every month there's a new watercolor tutorial. November's tutorial is, I gotta shoot it tomorrow. So it's gonna come out in a couple days, but that whole tutorial is all about brushstroke techniques, but I'm gonna do it right here for you guys right now. So like I said, the brush does all the work for you. And depending upon the size of your brush, you can create different kinds of petals and leaves. So I'm holding the brush vertically and just gonna bend it down and lift it up. So I use the whole belly of the brush to create that petal. And depending upon the size of the brush, and that's where these different size brushes can just be your friend, because instead of, if you're feeling uncomfortable about painting the petal freehand, just use your brush and the whole brush and do it all with brush strokes. So I'm holding this vertically and I use the whole belly of the brush and I'm holding it down. And then I get that whole petal again. This is one of my favorite. You'll see this. If you watch tutorials of mine, you'll see this over and over and over again. Because I'm a big believer, you just take what you have and the brushes that you have and you can create this. Now I could take that and I could glaze over top of it a couple different times and get that same effect. Does that make good sense? You could totally do that, Joanne.
Yeah.
Totally
Okay.
do that. You can. Just takes a little bit of fun and a little bit of practice and warming up, just getting your hand warmed up for it.
Right. Right.
Okay, do we have any questions before we start to paint one of these babies?
You need to get the real expensive brushes that you use.
Question, Marita. No, you don't. And I think I might have said this before you popped on, but this is the brush that I use. I use this brand mostly, Black Velvet, Silver Black Velvet. These are pretty reasonable. They're a little more costly than like a craft brush that you might find in a pack. But I've had these for several years, several years. So, and they're still just really, really good. They snap back, they come to a really nice point. There are lots of different brands of brushes. You don't need to use the super expensive brands to get started. You absolutely don't. I'm like, use what you have and try these techniques. If you have a water brush too, like a lot of us are paper crafters, so we have water brushes and they work great too, but just try out the brush. The difference between the brushes is how much water it'll hold and how much paint it will hold. Less expensive brushes hold less water and less paint. So that just means you're dipping into your paint a little more often.
Now, are those brushes synthetic fibers or natural?
These are the black velvet are a faux squirrel. So
Okay.
it's not real, because I'm not down with that, like using real animal hair.
Yeah.
There's sable out there. There's a lot of those kinds of brushes that are like that, and people absolutely love. That's why I love this brand, because it's just a faux version of it, but it holds so much water. Same thing with the Princeton brand. This Princeton Elite brand this is a synthetic that is supposed to mimic the sable. And so far, I think it does, but I mean, I've never used the sable one, so I'm not sure. Also, I don't want to spend $75 for a brush.
Yeah.
You know, and those sable ones are like really expensive. I think the most I've ever spent for a brush is probably like 18
Oh, that's
for
not bad.
a brush that's bigger than this in the silver black velvet brand, way bigger than this. So, and a lot of times you can
I lost you.
oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. A lot of times you can get this brand, the silver black velvet brand, on Amazon in packs, like of 3, with like a 4, 6, and an 8 round brush. So I think that they're really pretty affordable. But if you go to your local craft store and you look at, like, I'm thinking for here in Maryland, and Peggy can say this too, we have like Michael's
Right.
and
Joanne's.
Joanne's, right? I think those are two of the only 2 big boxy kind of craft stores left. We have art supply stores too that I love to go in, but like Michael's carries a Winsor Newton Cotman brand of brushes that's nice, and they also carry this Princeton brush. This is new and I got it from there, and I'm digging it. I like it. I've picked up a few to play around with. So
Are there special sizes that work better for this kind of?
well, I wouldn't say better. I would say the sizes that you're generally going to stay within are rounds. This is a 6, an 8. Look at that, 2 8s. That's not useful. A 6, a 4, 6, and an 8.
4, 6, and an 8.
6,
Okay.
8.
And these are the ones that I use all the time, because this 4, watch, I'm going to get it wet. It comes to a really nice point. Oops, hello, camera. Comes to a really nice point. Now you could go, and I also have a 2, but the 2 is like really if you want to get into like miniature areas. But I'm usually 4, 6, and 8.
Okay.
Is where I'm usually with it. And always round brushes.
Okay.
I've got a little ladybug that just landed in here out of nowhere. That's crazy.
Good
Okay.
luck. It's
I
good
know,
luck.
Good luck. It's good luck. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I'm good.
Everybody's
I'm
good.
good.
All right. We're going to get started on painting the first layer. I think it's going to take 3. This could take me a long time to paint, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to paint this petal, this petal, this petal, and this petal. And then I'm going to dry in between. And then I'm going to do the layers of this one. I'm afraid this could take me another hour to get it the way I want it to be. So let's see. Let's just go ahead and get started. Now, I'm going to do both techniques. The first one I'm going to share is the wet on dry. My brush is wet. That little ladybug is just flying around.
Are you using your number 6?
I am using the number 6.
Okay.
You could use the number 8 too. Depends on how you feel. But I'm using my number 6, and I'm going to go into the quinacridone red first. Just kind of get my brush nice and juicy here. I'm going to start with this guy right here. Now I'm going to start to paint, and I'm going to do that like brushy stroke kind of technique here. And you can see that I've already gone into some of that edge where the black is, but that's okay. And it's going to bleed into my, I was trying not to hit the edges too much, but that's okay. It's going to, I'm going to intentionally leave those whites. And now this is where, this is like the frightening part. Like, look at it. You're like, oh my God, what did I do? Right? I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Because I touched this edge a little bit. But that color, that ink that wants to come off, easily you can clean that up a little bit like that. But it easily wants to turn purple, which is kind of neat, mixing it in with that red. So I'm letting it bleed. Now I'm going to just go ahead and let that dry the way it is. That first layer was not super thick in color. I didn't have a ton of, I kind of watered it down here. You can see I didn't dip it. I watered it down and did that first layer. I tend to do that with my first layers. Very light washes. That's very light. I'm going to flip over, let that dry. Probably going to have to come back and dry it a little bit. Again, with that first layer right here of color of that quinacridone red, but it is pretty watered down. And I'm going to go in, this time I'm just going to kind of put a little bit right there. And I'm just using the brush, and I'm painting it in. And notice that I'm using the tip of the brush quite a bit. I'm going to leave a lot of that area right there wide open. I want to leave some of those whites. And just kind of
for highlighting.
Yes, for highlighting. It also, like in the class, it's also learning how to leave whites so that you don't have to put masking fluid down, right, to preserve your whites, or to put something down to keep you from painting in those areas. So it creates that highlight look and feel without having to add another product onto your painting. So this is looking, it's kind of funny. I'm having a little flashback to the class when I shot this part. And in the classroom, when you take the class, you'll hear me say, I know you're freaking out right now. Like, I know you're freaking out because it doesn't look good, right? It doesn't look good. But often watercolor is very much like that. It doesn't look good in our first couple layers. It's when we start to add more, and then we give it a little more love, and we add a little more color to it, and the glazing and the colors just start to jack up in their glow. Okay, I'm going to come to this one right here.
Lisa, do you just pick and choose where you're going to leave the white spaces?
Yes, and it's random. It's absolutely
Okay.
random. Absolutely random. Just like I painted these. Just
Right.
And each one of them just absolutely random. And also, if you miss, if you forget, no worries, right?
Because you could pick it up on the next layer.
You could pick it up on the next layer if you want to. So
Okay.
you're just leaving the whites in a couple of different places just to add that little bit of extra texture and dimension.
Right.
If you want to paint your poinsettia solid, paint it solid, right? You got 3 in the kit. You could try it a bunch of different ways. Also in the classroom, the downloads are there. You could always download it, print them out on watercolor paper, and paint some more. So this time,
good.
you notice with these 2 petals, I started from the center and worked my way out.
Right.
I'm going to start from the top of this one, and I'm coming in with the tip of the brush.
No.
And I'm going to work my way down. You can see I'm leaving whites. I'm just kind of coming down. Then I'm going to come up from the top to middle. And then I'm just going to leave that the way
Oh.
it is. See how I'm just leaving all that white right there?
Right.
Now, I don't like what I did right here. So I'm cleaning my brush, and I'm just going to put a little water right on that edge and just kind of coax it out just a little bit. And it bled a little bit, but that's okay. And I'm leaving that white just the way it is. Oh my goodness. It's freaky looking. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and paint this one. Then I'm going to go back and dry, and I'm going to do some glazing so that we can see this one come to life. These petals come to life. I also want to be mindful of everybody's time. We've been on for over an hour.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So I know I could be on here
Time
till
flies when you're having a
10
good.
o'clock painting this baby. So I'm going to paint these 4, and then I'm also going to show you these petals,
Okay.
like the green. What ends up happening when you're finished painting this poinsettia is it has this like vintage quality to it. It's got this 50s vintage kind of look and feel to it. And I think it's because of the color combination. So now with this petal, I'm going to show you, we've done wet on dry, but this one I'm going to do wet on wet. So my brush is wet. There's no paint in the brush. And I am going to paint in. Now, by now, your water is probably red because of all the color.
Mm-hmm.
So you
That was going to be my next question.
see how pretty it is. Don't drink it, right?
Not Kool-Aid.
So I'm going to paint in some water lines, and I'm just brushing them in. Bring it up to the camera so you can see. And now I'm going to take the pigment. I'm going to take the watercolor, and I'm just going to drop it in. And let's see where it goes. Because where it goes is where I've painted my lines. Let's just drop it in. And kind of, I didn't paint enough water in there, but I'm going to let it move. But now I'm going to bring this up closer to the camera and show you what I'm going to do with it. So that's another way to paint that petal, wet onto wet, but you also have a lot more open white areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I've cleaned off my brush, and my brush is wet. I'm going to paint in a few more areas here. Just kind of coax that paint around a little bit. Now this one, remember the watercolor only wants to go where the water is. So this one is like, try it on one of your bigger petals. And I like that. I'm going to leave it. Now you can see how it's touched that black. And I'm not so worried about it because it's going to dry. See how I was able to pick that up?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of wipe that away.
It really looks cool that way, though.
It does. It looks
like it.
scary. It looks really scary at first. Like this feels a little frightening over here, right? It's kind of gray, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and dry this. Then we're going to paint in another layer. We're going to glaze in another layer. Watch. I can even move that with my heat tool. Or burn my finger along the way. So those colors were so vibrant. Quinacridone red is so vibrant, and look at how much it dried back.
Wow.
Really, really dried back. Now, you have control over how much paint you pick up. The more water you add to your paint, the lighter everything is going to be. So I like to start that first layer with what I call like a skim milk layer. A lot of water, a little bit of pigment, very light going. Now we're going to go in with what I'm going to call a 2% layer. Little more pigment, little less water. I'm going to pick it up from this little gully I got going on here. And I'm going to come over here to this petal. And I'm going to follow some of the areas that I did, but not all of them. See how I'm just kind of swooshing it in a little bit? And that was wet on dry. So notice how there was no movement. Now I'm going to coax it around. I cleaned off my brush. I'm going to coax it around just a smidge. Then I'm going to let it be. And then you can see the layers underneath. And I've only gone into a couple different spots here. Oh, I'm digging this. This is going to look cool. I'm going to hold this closer. Is this working better? Holding it
Yeah.
closer to the camera?
Yes.
I don't know how it is for you though, but it's easier to see here.
Well, I can see myself painting, so I think that's helpful.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a big screen in front of me that allows me to be able to see. Otherwise, I'd probably be like, over here, over there, over there, over there, right? Right? So I do have this little cord here. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And on this petal, I don't have as many white areas, but I'm going to start to create a different white area. So I'm going to come in. I've got quite a bit of pigment on here, a little more than I'd like, but that's okay. You can see how I'm just swoosh, swoosh, swooshing that brush back around, and it looks a little bit like a hot mess, but that's okay. I cleaned off my brush, and I'm going to come in and just move it around just a smidge. I'm going to come to the edge here. Just a smidge. Oh, I'm loving that. This little area right here is bothering me. Let's just pull a little bit of the color that's already there over to the edge. And I'm going to let it be. Oh, this one's going to be so pretty. You can already start to see just in these two petals, only 2 layers, a lot of dimension and texture already. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to this one. We're definitely going to be painting 3 layers. In the class, in the classroom, when you take the class, I go through painting these back and forth between the quinacridone red and the quinacridone coral and this color and then the opera. So I kind of go back and forth. I think I do 6 layers in that class because I'm just trying to create so many different color combinations. So, okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. Got a little bit of skim milk here, coming up, coming around. Let's see, so this isn't like painting the way we traditionally think of painting, right? We traditionally think of painting as I'm going in, I'm going back and forth, and that's it. This is more like brushstroke painting is what I call it, where we're just using our brush. Now I cleaned my brush and it's now just water. And I'm just coaxing some of these areas around, but I am going to leave it because I want to preserve those whites. Oh,
So Lisa, you just took your brush out of the water and went right to the poinsettia. You didn't dry it, dab it on a towel or anything?
I didn't dab it on a towel. The only time I will do that, Marita, is if I feel like, you can see how I just dipped it in. You can see how that water just stays in the brush.
Yes.
It's pretty wet. See how it doesn't drip?
Right.
That's because this brush is it's a watercolor brush and it just loves the water. Now, sometimes I'm also, just to show you that technique, so I'm dipping it in here. I am just kind of making sure.
Right. So you just wipe it a little bit on the side,
Yeah.
but you don't dry it on the towel at all.
No. But if you do get too much, say I've got too much and I didn't wipe it on the side, when you want to wipe it on your towel, instead of just wiping it, just take it at the barrel right there and roll it.
Okay.
And when you do, it sucks in the water a little bit, and then it will really help not take too much water, but it'll help get all that saturation off that you're worried about.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint this one. And you can see these guys are starting to dry. And they were so vibrant when I painted them, weren't they? And now look at them.
Yeah.
They're drying, but you can see all those layers underneath. So we're starting to get more to dimension. I'm loving it. All right, let's go in. I've got some, look at that pigment. Oh, love it. Okay, I'm gonna come in. I'm just put a little swipe up there and a swipe here. I'm just gonna go in again with this little brushy technique, back and forth. I'm gonna clean my brush and kind of clean up that Frankenstein look I got going on there. It's a little harsh. Let's go ahead and clean that up. Okay, I'm digging it. Oh, I love that. So see how super vibrant that quinacridone red is right now?
Mm-hmm.
Look at her friends. They're starting to dry and they're not as vibrant, even though they were done the same way. So let's go ahead and I'm going to dry this. I'm going to force it dry because I'm going to add the third layer in, and I'm going to show you the difference between the yellow, the coral, and the hot pink so that you can see how you can get that third layer on your petals to look a little bit differently. Oh, pretty. So she's pretty, but she still needs a little bit more, right? To get to her glow face. I'm going to show you this one. See how this one over here on the right, it has a little bit less white. Like I left a little bit less intentional white there. But she's glowy. She's about 4 layers. And I'm going to show you how we've got yellow in here. We've got a little bit of the coral in here, and we have the hot pink. So each petal, you could, your last third or fourth layer, you can add these different colors to get those different variations that you would see in a poinsettia, because they're all not like, they're beautiful flowers. They have so many different variations of color in them. So we're going to do that with this little guy right here. This little gal. All right, I'm going to come in this big petal right here. I'm going to take some of the opera pink, which is that color right there on your dot card. I love opera pink. You'll find opera pink in many different brands. It's usually called the same thing across many different brands. And I'm just getting some water in here and I'm getting it nice and juicy. Skim milk juicy, so not wet down, but skim milk. And I'm gonna drop in a little bit of opera right here from her center of her petal out, and a little bit of opera right there. And I'm gonna coax that opera around a little bit. Clean my brush, and I'm just gonna coax it around just a smidge. Oh, she's so pretty. And just let that one dry. And I'm gonna go to her friend across the road and do a little bit of yellow. Do a little bit of that new gamboge and pop a little bit of the yellow in right here. I need a little more water on my brush. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow right here. Right here. I'm just kind of randomly dropping it in. That's one of the things that is a little bit different in the thought process with painting than you might be used to. I'm just randomly dropping these colors in and letting them play together to get these different effects. These two petals already, oh, I just love it. Okay, now I'm gonna grab the coral. Quinacridone coral is gorgeous color from Daniel Smith. It actually only exists in the Daniel Smith brand. There's different versions of it that call in other brands, like called vermilion or things like that. But the beautiful thing about the quinacridone coral is that it's a nice red orange that the more water you add to it, you can get these beautiful pinks. So just nerded out there. Okay, I am going to paint this one right here with a little bit of coral right here and a little bit of coral right here. So I'm just randomly picking a few places to add this intensity, this glazed. This little guy wants to fall out of my hand. There we go. Oh, I'm loving that. It's so pretty. I'm gonna just take this little edge right here. It's not looking so good. There we go. Okay. So this last one, I'm gonna go over her again with some of the quinacridone red. She's gotten a little bit violet in there, which I love, but she's gotten a little bit of violet in her center because she's mixed with that. She's made friends with the outer edge of her leaf. So I'm just going to intensify her colors by adding that quinacridone red. I'm going to go ahead and dry all of this. Then I want to show you the leaves for the Cascade Green. Oh, I just love this. Burning my thumb. Okay. So you've seen, we've done 3 layers, 3 glazed layers of watercolor. I've left a lot of whites, maybe a little more than I normally would, but we can see, look at that opera pink right there. Oh, is it coming through as vibrant as I can see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, now in this petal, you can see all of the different layers that we've added, but this one-dimensional petal now has some dimension to it. And we did that with paint and layering. And that's the beautiful thing about watercolor. I just love it. So this one, you can see the yellows. We can see the quinacridone reds. Oh, the other thing about Daniel Smith paints is that a lot of their paints, and the reason why I wanted to bring that dot card to you guys, is a lot of their paints have this granulating quality to them. So the minerals that are in the pigments granulate and they add a little bit of extra texture to your project that makes it, just gives it that extra little zip. It's not super smoothie, not like a smoothie effect. You get a lot of extra texture and dimension from that brand. Okay, so this petal, I'm bringing this petal close to see if I can get this to focus. There we go. This was the quinacridone red that we added. Now look at the intensity right there in the center as it comes closer. That's 3 layers of that color, but we can also see the other layers underneath that built up to that color. And this one was the coral. Now the coral just brings in a little bit of a pink tone without it being hot pink. Oh, just love it. Oh my goodness. So 3 layers of glaze. Now I might be more apt to go like one more layer just to intensify it a little bit more. But as you're painting your poinsettias and you're going from petal to petal to petal, and you do that first layer and then you do that second layer and you begin to do your third layer and you take a look, you might be like, this is good, I'm going to stop. Part of knowing when to stop is hard. It's really hard. A lot of times we just keep going and keep going. I would say with this kind of project, 3 to 4 layers of glazing of watercolor will do it. You can see we've done 3 layers and it looks pretty good, pretty good. The only thing I might do is I might add a 4th layer with just a little touches of yellow in different parts of the petal. Now I want to move on to paint one of the leaves in the Cascade Green because I want to show you, this is only 1 layer of this color, 1 layer.
There.
The absolute beautiful thing about this Cascade Green, and if you haven't had a chance to try it on your dot card, I wanted to bring that to you because it's just one of my favorite colors, because when it dries, you can see it granulates, but look, there's turquoise blue that's in there. So it gives you that green to blue green kind of effect. And when in our poinsettia project, it kind of gives it this little vintage quality to it, which I love. So I'm going to go ahead and paint it. I'm going to show it to you on my palette too. Look at it. See the blues?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? It's the only color out there that kind of does that. And it's Cascade Green from Daniel Smith. You could mix this color and make it happen with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, but it doesn't look the same because I've done it, because I thought, oh, let me try it. It just doesn't look the same. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and paint this in, and completely wet on dry. So my brush is wet, lots of pigment, sort of skim milk. So not a lot of water. I haven't watered it down. And I'm going to paint it. I'm just going to paint it right on. And you can see I'm just kind of being pretty, I'm painting a lot of it and doing it like in a traditional way, just straight up painting it. Now I'm cleaning my brush, completely clean brush. Now I'm going to coax it. I'm going to coax it down to cover the whole leaf. And I'm not even finished coaxing it, and you can start to see some of the blues. I'm going to bring it up.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
You can see those blues coming out. And the reason why I like this color so much for petals is because I did that in one pass, and that's all it's going to need. That's really all it's going to need. I'm going to dry it so that you can see. But when I dry it, it doesn't really fade back as much as the other colors do. But let's go ahead and add like another little layer on it and glaze it a little bit. Just adding a little bit, random. Remember how I said like brush strokes? No drawing experience required. You just kind of drop this paint in and brush it in. I left some of the white areas, painted that in. Oh, that's such a, I just love that turquoise blue that comes through. All right, I'm going to dry it again. Not going to burn my hand. Dries really quick too. And then I'm going to pull it up. Look at that.
Oh, it's pretty.
The other thing about the Cascade Green in your kit is, see if I can get really close so that you can see the granulation. Oh, this camera doesn't want to, bear with me. Camera doesn't want to cooperate. You see the little dots? That's the little pigment.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the pigment separating from the binder. and in the minerals that are in the pigment, and it's granulating. That's one of the beautiful things about Daniel Smith. It has a lot of granulating colors. So for your painting, it gives you a lot of extra texture in your project. Oh, love it. I'm gonna show you a couple other samples. Like you can see it in this one that I painted. These grains are all in one pass, but you can see those little dots. Feels like it's like you stippled it in or something, or drew it in, but that's the texture that granulation gives you. It's so pretty, so pretty. Okay. So before I go back to the forward-facing camera, any questions about that layering process for your petals?
Which would be better to do this as wet on wet or wet to dry? Or both?
Question. Such a good question. That's a really good question. I think I like both. Now I did both. And when you take the class, the full class, you can see that I did both, and I'll talk you through both. But if you feel like you want more control when you're first starting out, because you've got 3 in the kit, right?
Mhm.
Start with the wet on dry, because you're actually painting the watercolor exactly where you want it to go. But remember, if you paint wet on wet, you're painting the water. So the watercolor is only going to go where the water is. But sometimes it's a little bit psychological until you try and you get used to it a little bit more and you get comfortable with it. I like the wet on dry for really smoothie like effects, because you get that solid layer of color. The wet on wet technique gives me that flowy, washy look and feel that I absolutely love with my watercolors. So often my first layer is super washy, and I'm just like wet into wet, and I'm having fun with it. So play with it and just have some fun with the technique first. And you could also just do it on a piece of watercolor paper.
Mhm.
When you take the class, actually, you don't, like the way I walked you through everything tonight, it's much more elongated in the classroom. And we do the techniques first, like the wet on dry, the wet on wet. We do all that first before you even paint the poinsettia. So you get warmed up, get really warmed up to it. And then you paint the poinsettia and you feel ready to do it. So
Now, I have some Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Can I practice on that? Or should I get the Arteza one, or the other one that you like that's 100% cotton?
yeah, the Arteza's super nice and affordable. But if you have the Tim Holtz, his paper is not 100% cotton. It's more like the Canson paper, but use it to practice on, definitely.
Okay.
So that you
Okay.
can get comfortable, get to know your paints, get to know your brush, and know how it's going to work. And then when you go to paint the poinsettias in the kit, they're already on 100% cotton paper for you. So you'll be
Okay.
ready and you'll know. And then you'll have the experience of painting on both. So
Mhm.
you'll know the difference between the two and the effects that you get from the 2 papers. So
Okay, and the Arteza, can you only get it from Arteza, or?
you can get it from Arteza. It's also on Amazon. Like they have a huge Amazon
okay.
store for the paper. But just to show you, they have lots of different art supplies. And I think they have, I mean, their art supplies are great. They're great for paper crafting projects. I have quite a few of their watercolors I've tried out, and I enjoy them very much. What you want to look for, because they have 2 different kinds of pads.
Right.
This says expert on it, and make sure
Okay.
it says 100% cotton,
Okay.
because they have another one that says premium, and you're like, oh. And then it's not that. It's can't, you just bought Canson, right?
Okay.
So,
And the expert pad.
right, in the expert. And they just have a weird way of naming things sometimes. So just look for the words 100% cotton on that brand,
Okay.
on that cover. And if you typed it in like Arteza 100% cotton, it'll come up.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sometimes it comes in a 1-pack or a 2-pack. And they run deals all the time. So I have found it, since we're all paper crafty ladies, I love it for my paper crafting projects. Love it. I've also used it for paintings. I mean, I've used it for paintings. So I think it's a really great paper for the price. It's just, yeah, I haven't had any problems with it. I shout about it all the
Okay.
time. So
Okay.
I think it's a
So
really
if we're
good.
doing a bunch of Christmas cards, that might not be a bad choice for
Yeah,
our
here's my
watercolor.
Yes, exactly. Here's my theory on Christmas cards. And Peggy, I don't know if you ever heard this in one of my classes. You might have at Photo Scraps, because I've said this many times there. So my theory on paper creating cards is you have like your premium paper, which would be like our 100% cotton. Those are for the cards or the projects for the people that you give them to, that you know they're not throwing away your card.
They're
Right?
not gonna end
Yeah.
up in the garbage.
They're like that premium people that are going to keep your card and maybe frame it, right?
Right.
People that keep your card and bring it out every year at Christmas.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And use it as decor or whatever.
Yeah.
The people you want to give the Canson to are the people who grab the card and be like, this is nice. And then they set it down and you're like, right?
Yeah.
I
You
just
know
spent
who
an
they
hour
are.
on that card. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know who they are and we love them just the same. Or we might not create cards for them. But you just know that, you know, sometimes we judge our supplies based on who we're going to
Yeah.
give our project,
Oh, definitely.
right? That's my theory.
You
So
love me.
I use certain brands for certain people, right? So did anybody have any questions about all the things that we talked about? We've been on
Makes
for
me
like,
anxious to get in that class and have a chance
yes,
to
Yes.
I
do
can't
it.
wait for you all to get in the class. We've been on here for an hour and 40 minutes and I love it. I could keep going, believe me. But I have a couple questions for everyone who's here. First of all, did you like the kit, the concept of the kit idea and the class that goes with it? And you have the
Love it.
option.
Yes.
Love it. Love
I
it.
want to, it's kind of the direction I'm headed with a lot of my classes, in my thoughts for the future of creating the kit. It seemed like I got a pretty bigger response. Because some people, even though I give all of the pieces that you need for the class, might not have the printer or just might not want to take that extra step to have to print everything out. But just know that when you step into the classroom, all of that's there for you so that you can
okay.
print them out again. And all of the techniques that we did tonight, there's a technique sheet that you just print out on your watercolor paper. And in the class, we go through the techniques and you do it right on that sheet. And you can keep it. So I design every class like that. We go through the techniques first, and then we do the project together. So you learn everything and you warm up, and then you do the project. So I'm happy to hear about the kit, that you guys
Love
really
it.
enjoyed the kit.
Yeah, it's great.
And the
Yeah,
price
the kit
point,
is
I mean,
definitely- yeah.
the price point is right on too.
Okay,
Yes.
good, good.
Oh,
I thought so too.
absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
And I love the idea of sharing the kit. And then I've had people that have stepped into the classroom that didn't buy the kit, that just paid full price for the class. I really feel like it's a better deal if you get the kit.
It is.
It is.
And then you have everything at your disposal, and you
Right.
get 3 cards along the way. But I get it. Some people may already have all these things in their stash, and that's the intention too. If you have all these things in your stash, I just want to teach you the techniques, or give
Mhm.
you the time and the space to craft your joy and enjoy a little bit of time for yourself and make something. So that was the intention behind that. I'm so happy to hear that. The next thing I want to ask is, I'm looking into the future and the new year, perhaps doing more lives that are like this, live teaching, a whole course or something like that.
Mhm.
That would be like an hour, well, we're an hour, 40 minutes in, an hour,
It's gonna end up
2
to be
hours,
2 hours.
something like that, at a reasonable price point just for our time together. So I'm
Mhm.
thinking about doing some more of those kinds of things. And then of course the video would be available on the replay. How do you feel about that kind of concept?
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yep,
Like a
Yeah.
paint night.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In this way too, I have to say, Lisa, we can put names and faces together of people that we've seen online and
Yes.
get to know them too. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Well, I've been struggling to find a way to create more community. And
Right.
this is like the way to do it, because I want to see your faces and I want to get your questions live. And when I go live in my group, or if I go live on my channel or YouTube, I can't see everybody, right?
Right.
I can't, I get questions and I recognize names and things like that, but there's a lot lost in that. And I love doing the lives, but it is less intimate. And I feel like I can't I like to be able to hear what your question is and then address it and show you. Like,
Right.
so you're
Yeah.
getting
And then
more
this
customized
way
experience.
too, everybody is learning
Yes.
at the
And we
same
can
time
share.
too.
And
Yep.
you might, like Marita's asked several questions that might have been helpful. The answer is helpful to you. It might have been something you were thinking about. So that's
Right.
what I'm thinking, like doing a little bit more lives. There are different ways to do it, like from a technical aspect, but I'm finding that Zoom is like the best way versus doing it in Facebook groups and things like
Right.
that. Because again, I can't see you. So
And not all of us do I don't do Facebook,
yeah,
so Zoom is good for me.
good. I like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
So don't forget I'm going to share a quick screen. Let's see if I can get it to work. What was I going to do? I'm going to share my screen really quick for the Craft Your Joy classroom. Let's zip on over to it. Okay. I just wanted to show you real quick the Playful Poinsettias, and I'm pretty sure all of you have registered for this class. I remember everybody in there. So it's in there, but if you, there's 9, 3, 6, 9. I thought there were 8. There are 9 courses that are in here. And this is our Exploration 2020 that I was talking about.
Oh.
So there are 10 lessons in this course right now. So, because there's one for every month, and this is free. So you already have an account in the Craft Your Joy classroom. This is already accessible to you. And there are, I just wanted to share that with you because there's so many projects in here. So from January to October, and each month I explore a different color. And there's different, these projects are so fun. So painting a Luna moth, a lot of florals. So a lot of really fun things in there. And these lessons are shorter. They're like 15 minutes or less. So I just want to make sure you know that's there for you. And that'll be there forever. You have an account in the classroom, and that's just always going to be there for you. So
Awesome.
And if you take this, once you take this course all the way through to the end, if you enjoyed the class, I would love it if you could leave a review if you enjoyed the class. And also at the end of the class, you'll get a coupon code that you can use in any class in the future for $5 off any class. And you can use that coupon code over and over again. Like if you wanted to take them all, you could, you know? So just another option. And I just wanted to share that with you. So like I said, the next tutorial going in for art exploration is, I'm going to be shooting that tomorrow. I thought I was going to shoot it today, but I didn't. And that is about brushstrokes. So a lot of the things that I talked about today with brushstroke techniques, I've covered in lots of different tutorials, whether you've caught me on YouTube or you've caught me in the Craft Your Joy classroom. I just kind of keep covering them in different ways over and over and over again. And over time, we practice more and we get better at what we're doing. So does anybody have any questions? Anything else?
My mind is just going, woo, woo.
I appreciate you recording it so we can go back. And
Yes, we can come back. That's awesome.
You can absolutely come back, and I will make sure another email will go out. Like I said, I'll set up it'll be on my website, and I'll set up a private blog. So the rest of the world can't see it, but you'll get the link, and the video will be embedded in that blog post. And you can just watch it over and over and just stop, start, you know, look and review and do things over and over again.
Do a stroke and then stop and then do a stroke.
Stop and see if you like it. If you get in, when you get into the Craft Your Joy classroom and you take this class, there's also a discussion area. So if you're in the class and you have a question, just pop that question in the discussion area. I get them. It pops to my phone, it pops to my computer, and I go in and I will answer them. And also, all of you know how to reach me in direct message on all the social platforms, on all the ways, or just email me. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have along the way. And I would love it when you get started with your poinsettias and you build your cards and share them with me. I would love if you share it with me. If you share them in social media, tag me and I'll push it back out. I would love to share it with everyone else. So, oh my goodness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely
Really
wonderful.
Thank
Loved
you.
every minute of it.
Thank you.
Loved meeting you, ladies.
Yes.
It's so great to meet everyone. Robin, I hope you enjoyed
Oh,
everything.
absolutely.
Yes, good.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'm so grateful everyone could join me tonight and you took the time out to spend it with me and support my small business. It means a great deal to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great night. And Joanne,
Okay.
I hope your surgery goes well tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes.
It'll be fine.
Let us know how it goes.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
I will.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.